Yes, I am because we are. Thank you everyone that joined us for today's Pan-African History call. Thank you for sparing part to attend this meeting. So we are going to, with this meeting, we are going to have different country speakers. After the country speakers, we have the Pan-African Healthcare class with Nana Akua. Then after the Pan-African Healthcare class, we have another class, the Pan-African History class with Dr. Tyrone Wright. So stay tuned. We are going to have our brother, Sule Molo, helping us with a prayer and continue with the report. Yes, Brother Sule Molo, can you hear me? You can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, brother, we can hear you. You can help us with the prayer in your local language.
Okay. Okay. Te puso na barke ne on tete dalsan ayo. Te la stava bi stava te ka nusong ni ta stava. Tam la sia kala stava. Te to tro na me ya na me bo dum jen sia. Ka ni ta stava wore. Ka te ang la so. Ka buat ni ta ka la. Ka de ken ka ana ma kana tuma ka ana tuma. Karena ti bi da ta duwana ka na nan sai tam da nan sima. Ti to tro na ya na me bo dum jen sia. Ka yele ta mal. Amen.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for that prayer. You can continue with your report. You have 3 minutes.
My message crashed and it went off. So let me on let me just kill my distance and then bring it up.
Okay, no problem. Yes, as we are waiting for our brother Suleiman to reconnect, we are going to have our brother Edwin Chamba. Yes, Edwin Chamba, can you hear us?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you.
You have 3 minutes to present your prayer.
Thank you so much. As you said, my name is Edwin Chamba, an ambassador from Tanzania. And today I'll be presenting about African culture and how it unites us as Africans. Yes, direct to the point, African culture is some of shared attitudinal intentions and capabilities, arts, beliefs, moral codes, and the practice that characterize Africans. As the African, we share most of African cultures and activities in different places of Africa and diaspora that introduces us as African to the world. They are all known as African heritages. For example, an attitudinal intentions that we share as African include hospitality, chastity, truth, respect for the old age, covenant keeping, hard-working spirit, and good character. That is the attitudinal intentions of Africans as we share as Africans. All Africans can share those attitudinal intentions. These are the many Africans' iconic behaviors that we all share, but we differ in very few of us as Africans, and as we bear clean hearts with love to the world, and that's how we are as Africans. Africa has rich traditional arts and craft that expresses the values and varieties of wood carving, brass, and leather artwork. African arts and craft also include sculptures, pottery, ceremonial and religious wear, religious tradition, culture, and headgear, as well as dresses. We share the most of created scriptures from different regions of Africa. For instance, in Senegal and the Congo, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda, we are making Congo masks that we give our names according to the places that created that masks. We also have some clothes known as kitenge clothes, designed in different ways, but mostly kitenge comes from Congo, Ghana, and other countries, but we all wear kitenge. As in Tanzania, we wear kitenge as one of our cultural dresses. Also, the cultural ties and unites people in Africa and societies, such as cultural ties and other cultures that unite people in Africa includes, first of all, intermarriage. When a person from Tanzania marries a Ghanaian, Nigerian, brings about closely tied relationship between them and the two families from different African places to become one family through marriage. I encourage every African to find a way in intermarriage because it is one of the most African traditional practices that unites Africans in quicker and strong. Other thing that we share is food and clothes. As I said before, that our clothes and design we share bring us together as African societies, but also food that we eat resembles in many ways as African in regions, countries, and societies. For example, when you take an example of Bulgari. Okay, thank you. Let me finish up maybe with the languages and music. The most of the languages and music, African music that we share are the strongest things that we can share and that can bring changes in African society. Some of the languages such as Zulu, Igbo, Luo resemble in African traditional languages of Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. For example, Makonde of Tanzania, Ngoni of Tanzania, they speak Zulu, but in the other way. Swahili is another language that I encourage every African to know Swahili and speak Swahili because Swahili unites people, and Swahili is one of the languages that united Tanzanians and made Tanzanians to become a peaceful country. Today, I'll end up there because my time is up. Thank you for everyone for listening, and welcome again for another Pan-African call of the next week. Thank you so much. I am because we are.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Edwin Chamba. I am because we are. Thank you for that wonderful report. Up next, we are going to have our brother, Makochera Precious from Malawi. Yes, brother, you can unmute yourself.
I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes to present your report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Precious Yamikani Makochera from Malawi. So I would like to present this week's topic.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk to you all about African culture and how it unites us as Africans. There's an undeniable beauty in the diversity of African cultures, from the vibrant music, art, literature, to the rich tradition, customs, and beliefs. On the continent of Africa rise many different countries, each with their own language, traditions, and beliefs. Despite this diversity, African culture is united by the need for familiar bonds, respect for the land, and the shared heritage that can be traced back to our ancestors. Although there may be differences in our respective languages, customs, and beliefs, there's a certain common thread connecting us all as Africans. That is a commitment to preserve and protect our culture. This is especially important in a world that often marginalizes and overlooks tradition of African culture. By coming together and uniting our fellow Africans, we can create a collective understanding of our heritage and legacy. We wish to live for future generations by understanding and respecting each other. We can build bridges between the diverse cultures to create a unified African identity. With this understanding, we can work together to ensure our culture remains strong and thriving within the increasing globalized world. Not only that, our culture can be safeguarded, but it can also be used to build understanding and support between different subcultures and making us more connected than ever. This is incredibly exciting time for our culture. Let's continue to cherish and celebrate our African culture and unite as Africans. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Precious Makochera from Malawi. Thank you for that wonderful report. Yes, up next, you are going to have our brother Sule Mono. Yes, Sule, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, Yvonne, thank you very much. This afternoon, as we are all saying African culture and how it unites us as a people. African culture, as we all call it today, is the way of life of humanity. Culture, as we know, refers to how we live as a people, which covers all aspects, both physical and spiritual, of us to eternity. Our culture is divine and not man-made. If you go against it, you will be struck by certain powers. That is why we are suffering today. We are ruled and directed by supreme powers. There is no discrimination among us in our culture. There's no discrimination among us in our culture, for we all share the same values or customs. All because we are being ruled by the same God, into bracket Wenam in my local language, or God. We knew God and God across the black human race, that they are not the same. We knew the difference between them and why it is like so. In our culture as Black, we share whatever we have among us. Today, we see some slight difference among us in our tradition, all because of the different locations that we find ourselves now after the great destruction by the Romans in the year AD 70. For example, the way we perform marriage, naming of child, funeral ceremonies, and so on. Our forefathers knew how it should be done, so they designed their customs based on their location. But still, it is the same. We are not greedy. We marry each other, no matter where you come from or who you are. In our traditions or culture, we fear evil. We fear evil, for there is punishment for such acts. Anybody who plans to commit evil deeds will not take it easy. Either you hide it or not. There's a big eye which watches over us and guide our conduct. Our culture unites us as a people, brings peace among us, promotes development, respect to each other and to elders, and many more. So I think as Africans, based on these values that I've given small, and it is rare and it's true, when you go back to our tradition, all these things unite us. So let me end here. Thank you. I am because we are. Greetings to everybody.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Suleiman. I am because we are. Thank you for that wonderful report. Yes, yeah. Up next, you're going to have our brother, Mohamed Kamara from Sierra Leone. Yes, Brother Mohamed, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everyone. My name is Mohamed Kamara. I'm from Sierra Leone. Yeah. Actually, I'm so proud to be chosen as a speaker in this particular platform to talk about African culture and how it bring us Africans together? Africa, yeah. African culture is so important that African culture is important and can bring so many ways. Is the music and the dance. This African culture has existed for over 1,000 years, as I can say. African culture is rich in custom and tradition. Yeah. African culture is a sense of respect in which each and every one of us respect our elders. This African culture is a way in which we show unity to each other. We live as one family. As I'm trying to say that at the first bullet point I said, African culture has many ways which can do music and dance. Yeah, as you can see, which is deep rooted in our culture. Music and dance are seen as a way of expressing joy, tradition, and also what in our community festival. Yeah. Another aspect of this African culture is what? The respect. This African culture teaches us how to respect our elders. Our elders, one, the people that are more aged than us, we respect them because it's our culture. You see? Also, this African culture is an aspect of which African culture it's focused on community and collaboration. This is in most African society, community members support each other in time of needs.
Left.
In time of needs, you see?
Yes, 30 seconds left.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Let me give this one bullet point. One is that this African culture shows sense in everyone, in every African citizen. Yeah. Yeah. People help each other in all means, whatever as brother and sister. Thank you, because thank you. I am because we are.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Mohammed. I am because we are. Thank you for that wonderful report. Up next, we are going to have Brother Ofoli Dankwa. I hope I just pronounced your name well, from Ghana. Yes, Brother Ofoli, you can unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm an ambassador from Ghana. So unfortunately, I'm at the program right now, and I've excused myself to talk a little on culture on African continent. Culture in African continent is the way we live in Africa with our people, and it is a broad, it is a wide subject that we need to discuss very well. You know, in our Ghana, the culture we have, that has helped us in bringing up our children. The same happens through our various African continents, and it will be very and it's going to be helpful if we all come together as one to build, to learn from each other, to make the continent grow very well, so that we can make live in a better place. Because sometimes in Africa, we fear, because we don't learn much of our cultures, we find it difficult to live with people in our neighboring countries, and it has been a problem. So we need to solve that so that we can live in harmony. As my brother said, the first speaker said from Tanzania, he said we need to do that, like intermarriages, so that we can build a better Africa for us. Thank you very much. I am the prof here.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Ofoli from Ghana. Thank you for that wonderful report. Yes, up next, we're going to have our brother, Alfred Komba. Aya Alfred Komba. Yes, can you hear us?
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Sorry, I cannot use the video now. I'm in a situation where I don't want to project a background. So first of all, I want to thank every speaker and also to compliment what they've just said. With regard to the central topic, which has to do with the culture of Africa, I think I want to learn from the lips of a few documents or documentary that we've seen, especially in the area of the era of the former Libya president, Muammar Gaddafi, the trend he started the European Union, the African Union, from the Organization of African Union, the OAU, to African Union, the agenda he has to unify Africa, to bring Africa as a unit body, instead of us seeing it with boundaries, or we refer them to be colonial boundaries, which are the international borders. For us in Africa, if we actually need to see this culture coming and existing, actively projecting at global level, so we can see ourselves being unified and united as Black people, it is good that we have few things, as other speakers have just suggested. We have few things that needs to be a laid down principle, and see how best us, I love Black people, can act on them effectively by one, implementing them. Like for instance, I learned from previous things that Muammar Gaddafi and some other stakeholders who were present with him, they were about establishing few institutions that will be for the benefit of Africa. He himself contributed immensely to see that there was a launch of a satellite that will help Africa to recover a resources that was worth $500 million, that salvaged that from Africa losing to the Europeans. And I'm sure if we have such kind of leadership, such kind of unity in Africa, we have those who can stand firm on their feet and moving forward with such positive idea to unify, bring Africa to realize themselves and moving forward with a specific focus. And I'm sure, quite sure, that Africa will be greater. Looking at the traditions as the topic of culture we may want to emphasize on. You see, we lose some of our cultures and values as a result of either admiration, either lack of understanding to utilize even our resources, which can help boost our economy, boost our society, boost our environment in diverse ways. In fact, it will serve as a bedrock to bring back the glory Africa seems to have lost. And I'm sure if this family, as I love Black people, we does not just cater for Blacks that are dwelling in Africa, but all over the world. That's its major purpose is to ensure we fight against racism, xenophobia, which is very important. But again, we cannot achieve these things without the unification. And I'm I want to say the tradition which we've lost. Leadership, in the common adage says it comes from God, meaning every African must understand the leadership trend. And in Africa, if our
Yes,
leaders
30
are
seconds
seems like
left.
demigods, sorry.
30 seconds left.
Okay, let me just complete. If our leaders are seen as demigods who are authoritatively making decisions for our tradition, then there is a need for Black people. I love Black people family to start engaging them in making decisions for Africa that will unify us. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Alfred. Thank you for that wonderful report and insights. I am because we are. Up next, we're going to have our brother, Manuel Muke from Zambia. Yes, Brother Manuel, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Yes, good evening.
Good afternoon. I guess it's good morning to some of the countries right now. Yeah, my name is Manuel Muke from Zambia. Yeah, I'm doing my presentation in Zambia, Northwestern Province. Yeah, the land of copper. Yeah, I'm doing a Pan-African culture and how unity we should be as Africans. Yeah, I love Black people. Yeah, the idea of Africans from the interest we had common. Our ancestors had common goals. According to the Pan-African history, it has offered and undertaken the same shape of political and cultural movements. Therefore, many and varied Pan-Africanism is announced political manifesto. As Pan-Africanists, our vision is to unite Africa as one nation, so that the people of Africa, the people who live in, like the people in Africans who live in diaspora, African who live in those countries like United States, according to the history process, these people, they are just presented and they are fetched and taken their ancestors' hometowns, Africa. So, as according to the history, we need to unite together. We need to tell those people they are grassroots. We need to tell them about where they're coming from, so that as Africans, we stay united. We celebrate the fact of the history we have as Blacks. Yeah, Pan-Africanist idea first begins with, it began in the mid-19th century in the United States, which was led by Africans from Western countries. The most important early Pan-Africanists were Martin Delane and Alexander Carem, both African Americans, and Howard Bernard from West India. These are the people who led the voice of Pan-Africanism.
Yes, 30 seconds left.
Oh, wow. Yeah, through the important model and coming to read as some of them were Christians, some of them were not Christians, but they have the same goal to read the new Africa, which we are fighting for as we who are here today. Yeah, I love Black people. I am because you are. We have a lot to do. We need to unite. We need to bring Africa together so that from the look of things, the generation we are in, we need to stand strong and be the Pan-Africanists with one goal, with no division, no borderless Africa. Thank you very much. This is a short presentation I had for you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Brother Manuel Moke from Zambia. Thank you for that wonderful report. Yes, up next, we're going to have our brother Mulesu Joseph from South Sudan. Yes, can you hear us, brother?
Yes, hello, thank you.
Yes,
I'll try as much as possible to cover what I've prepared in 3 minutes. My goal here is actually to try to help everyone to understand South Sudan and, of course, see opportunities for peace and opportunities even for investment and for interaction, to understand the culture of South Sudan, so that we will be able to identify as Africans. And for those who don't know, South Sudan is the newest country and the 193rd member of the United Nations. It got its independence in 2011 from Sudan after fighting a very long civil war, close to almost half a century. South Sudan is a landlocked country now in East Africa, and it's bordered by Ethiopia, Sudan, Kenya, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and has a very big, actually, landmass. If you compare it even to the UK or maybe to Germany, it's about 3 times the UK and twice Germany. So you can understand that only it has a population of 11 million, approximately, over 11 million today. It's made of 60 tribes, and this side, main animals, large quantities of animals, and also growing crops. Apart from that, the land of Africa, South Sudan, mainly is very fertile for agriculture, looking to the fact that there is adequate water, the soil is fertile and virgin, actually. Now, talking a little bit about the culture of South Sudan. South Sudan is having a mixture of both Arab heritage, indigenous African cultures, and also reflects its colonial past. You can see, of course, its languages are around 64 or more, but the official language is English. We also use Arabic, but also we have what we call Juba Arabic, which is a mix of the local languages and also the classical Arabic that came during the time of the invasion, of course, of the Ottoman Empire. So another aspect that I would like to discuss is that the history of South Sudan. South Sudan was, of course, attacked by the Ottoman
30
Empire.
seconds left.
Okay, so I think I would like to a little bit rush backward. The current situation in South Sudan is that South Sudan is having a lot of problems, civil wars, even after seceding from the Sudan. Okay, and many refugees, about 2.3 million, have left the country, and because of that, there are chances next year there will be elections, and people are doubt whether there will really be peace or people will go back to war. So those are some of the challenges that the country faces. And many people say, for example, that Dr. John Garang, who is the father of the country, actually fought for what? For independence. Important quote, which I think many people who really understand that Dr. John Garang was not actually focusing on secession for South Sudan to separate from the Sudan, but he was actually thinking about uniting Sudan and, of course, the unity of Africa. And this is what he said, that I joined the movement with total commitment and dedication. I have resolved to give the ultimate sacrifice, my life, for I am bound by nothing else but duty and commitment to Africa and the African people. So that shows that
Yes,
unity
time
is
is
something
up.
that is very, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you too. Thank you for that wonderful report. I am because we are. We're going to have our last speaker, Monja Fabien, from Cameroon. Yes, Brother Monja, you can unmute yourself.
Ibrahim.
Yes,
Pardon. Come.
Yes, Monja, can you hear us?
Yes, good. Sorry. I can hear you very well. Good afternoon, African. My
Yes,
fellow Africans.
you have 2
Right,
minutes to present your report.
Yeah. Yeah, like and the mic can do. Well,
Yes, Fabien, can you hear us?
just give me a minute. If there is somebody that can present, there is somebody that you can first the presentation, let him continue. Then I will be the last because I'm still at my job site.
Okay, yes, we are going to continue with the Pan-African healthcare with Nana Akua. Yes, if you would like to receive a shout out from her, you can turn on your camera. She likes watching the beautiful faces.
Good afternoon, good morning, good day, everyone. Can you all hear me? I have my air conditioner on. Is it
Yes,
loud
we
enough?
hear you.
Okay, very well. Hello, everyone. Hey, Curtis. Hey, Candace, Chiwa, Joseph, Isaac, Manuel, Monja. Y'all did well. Okay, a lot of people turned their cameras on. Good job. Hey, Yvonne, how are you?
Yes, I'm okay. How
Well.
about you?
Good, very well. All right, so welcome to the Pan-African Healthcare class. Missed you guys last week. I stepped in briefly, as you may recall. So we're going to continue today, and we are talking about our week 6, which covers stress release and stress management, handling emotions. Not sure what video you played last week, Yvonne. Did it discuss signs of stress and things of that nature? Okay, so we're going to continue, and I did pull up. Let me see if I can share my screen. I think it is up. Very good. So what I want to talk about, so hopefully last week we discussed, well, you heard me, the signs of stress and symptoms, ways in which to handle it and that sort of thing. What I'd like to talk about, I do believe session should have included the flower remedies. Is that right, Yvonne?
Yes.
I'm correct?
Yes, you are right.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about different flowers or plants that help us manage our emotions. Feelings are very important. I think that oftentimes we overlook our feelings. We overlook how people treat us and how they make us feel. And I think that that ruins a lot of relationships, and that definitely has a very sure and direct impact on our well-being. I usually talk about this in regards to stress and how it can cause stress. But I want to kind of draw this fact out that we often either fail to build relationships, or we fail to continue build relationships because people don't always know how to manage how they interact with others, and maybe are not as conscious about how they make people feel, right? So there's a saying, and I'm definitely paraphrasing because I don't know the exact quote, but it talks about, and I don't know, Oprah or someone may have, maybe it was Maya Angelou, but people don't always remember, you know, certain things about you. Maybe not your name, maybe not what you did or what have you, but they'll remember how you were treated or how they treated you or how they made you feel. And I think that that's very important because that is what is most memorable. Even if you don't get every detail right as to what happened, or, you know, someone will say, oh, weren't you and so really good friends, or you all used to be close, and you'll, you know, say, oh yeah, we used to, and they'll ask, oh, what happened? You may not even draw all of the memories about what specifically happened, right? But you'll know how they made you feel. You'll remember that part of it. So feelings, we often downplay them, and that is what I want us to not do. I want us to pay very close attention to how we feel. Another thing I often say as part of this class and in general, the biggest lie that most of us tell every day, right, is how we're doing. Right? Most commonly asked question is, how are you? How you doing? How's it going? The biggest lie that most of us tell, right, is, oh, I'm fine. Everything's good. I'm all right. Right? That happens every day. Curtis is smiling. You agree with me, right? So we often do this. And sometimes it's because we're just in passing, you know, not really having deep conversation or interaction with anybody. And sometimes it's because we don't think they care, or we don't have the time to indulge, or we don't trust the person enough to indulge how we're really feeling. But that is one thing we have to really take track or take account of and keep track of for ourselves. How are we feeling? How is it going? How am I managing? How am I handling life, right? And so the flower essences deals with that specifically, right? It deals with you evaluating how you feel, okay? And this handout, and there are several handouts on the flower remedies. Actually, there's 3 that I teach from. I'm teaching another class later today, and there's 2 other handouts. This was the most streamlined one that I thought was best for this class. Because it's a brief, you know, class, so we're doing this with extreme brevity, right? And so, but there are different characteristics for each of these remedies, different self-talk, different physical and emotional symptoms, different organs that, you know, these types of feelings or emotions impact. So there's a lot of ways in which to discuss our feelings or our emotions and how they impact our lives. But I want to highlight a few of the flower essences here. And this handout kind of talks about it in sort of negative terms, but this is all, you know, you don't have to share with anyone. You don't have to say out loud ever if you don't want to say, oh yeah, that's me, right? Because this is kind of giving you sort of that negative aspect, but the good news is taking the remedy will turn it back to that positive aspect, giving you that opposite effect, right? So if we dealt with this first one that's listed here, agrimony, right? This is for people who suffer from inner torture, right? They, you know, are really down on themselves. They have really negative self-talk. You know, they're really dying inside, quote unquote, right? But they'll put on the face, they'll wear the mask. They will pretend that everything is fine. They will show you that sunny disposition, even though they may be contemplating ending it all, right? So this is a very important one. If this is you, agrimony is an excellent remedy for kind of turning that around, right? Another one that I think is very important, and we run into a lot of people like this, beach. Beach is for people who are very critical, overly critical, right? They're intolerant of others. They complain a lot. No one else can do anything right. They're pretty arrogant. They think they are the end all and be all. They have all the answers their way. It's sort of like my way or the highway. My daddy used to say that. Right. But this is that type of person where they think their way is the best and only way. Very judgmental and critical of other people. If this is you, right? If you know that people get on your nerves and can't nobody do anything right, beach is the remedy for you. Another one of my favorites, and I think this is really, really good for sometimes children, sometimes people who are highly emotional and kind of all over the place. Cherry plum is a good remedy for anyone that has sort of uncontrollable, irrational thoughts. They're constantly in fear of losing control, right? We see this a lot on our jobs, right? A lot of our managers or supervisors, they go overboard with showing they're the boss, right? But usually these are people that are suffering from their whole inner torture of knowing they don't have it together, right? So they will go overboard in their other parts of their lives, right? To show I'm in control, do what I say, but inside they know that they're out of control and they have that fear of going crazy or losing it. They may have temper tantrums. They may be really impulsive. They may have outbursts. So a lot of times this may apply to children, right? We think of this in terms of temper tantrums that you may have in children, but know that a lot of adults have temper tantrums. These are also people who may be suicidal, right? But cherry plum is the remedy that can bring that back into balance. Another one that I like to highlight is elm. Elm is not as extreme as some of these other ones. This is for the person who just temporarily feels overwhelmed or overcome with responsibilities. Normally they are able to handle their business. They usually don't get overwhelmed and feel really stressed about their daily routine. But this is the person that there's some sort of situational change, a schedule change, some sort of adjustment that has to be made for some other life change, a new job, what have you. Elm helps you to kind of handle these moments where you feel like you're just overwhelmed and overcome with your responsibilities. Another one is gorse. Another really, really important one is gorse. I've often talked about this over these last 3 years of the pandemic, where we have had a lot of loss and a lot of sickness, a lot of transition, businesses closed, being separate from loved ones, being isolated from everyone. And this is for people who have just lost hope. They are in a great state of despair and grief. They feel defeated. Their self-talk is, oh, what's the use? How can I go on? Or what is the point, right? Gorse is for that type of really depressed or desperate sort of feeling where there is no hope. Gorse. Another one that I really, really think, holly is one. If you're usually sabotaging your relationships because you're overly jealous, you're envious, you're vengeful, the slightest thing that someone does to you, or even if you just think they're doing it to you, right? And your relationships don't last, holly may be something you want to try, right? You may want to get your jealousy or your envious nature in check. Hornbeam is another one similar to elm, but this is for people who kind of get a slow start to the day sometimes, where they call it the Monday morning blues, just sort of blah feeling. I don't really want to, I don't feel like it. You know, mentally I'm drained. I need an extra day in the weekend. This reminds me of that whole jet lag feeling, right? If you've ever flown, or even if you've traveled in the car or train and you feel like, oh, this is taking so long, this has physically drained me, and now I'm mentally exhausted. I just need to rest. I need relaxation. This can help hornbeam. This is also if you just, again, similar to ELM, you got a lot of tasks to complete and you're feeling overwhelmed. You find yourself procrastinating to do things that are really simple that you normally do pretty easily. Hornbeam is that remedy. Impatience. Anybody who knows me, I suffer from impatience. Similar to the flower, impatience. This is for people who are impatient, who get highly irritable. Sometimes they're a little melodramatic. I've been told a bit. This is also good for people who have high blood pressure, who usually do suffer from stress and kind of always on the go, don't really know how to sit back and relax, smell the roses, as they say, but is always sort of on the go. There's always something to do, has sort of that woe is me sort of mentality sometimes because there's so much to do and very little time to do it. Impatience is the remedy for me and for other people like this, right? And I'm okay with pointing these things out because remember, these are giving the negative, right? But if you know yourself and you're honest with yourself, we all have things that we can develop, that we need to improve, that we can grow from and grow out of, right? At 50 and beyond, we have these aspects of ourselves that we can improve and we can use these remedies to get through those things. I'll point out a couple more. Uh-oh, my computer is doing something. I don't know if it's jumping on your end, but oh. What's happening? Yvonne, are you seeing is my screen shaking?
No, it's not. But
oh my.
There is something E3 that you open.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know.
It's on that.
I'm trying to exit out. I mean, I said, oh goodness, what did I do? I'm trying to exit out. Let's see. Hold on. Oh geez. Oh, did it go away?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, my screen is still jumping, but if you can see the handout, fine.
Yes, you can still see the handout.
Okay, it's just going to annoy me. Okay, so okay. Oak. Okay, so yeah, oak and olive I've both used pretty much in line with elm and hornbeam. These are just good when there's just a lot to do. Me, I'm always involved in things that I'm always multitasking. I'm always involved in a number of organizations or efforts or movements or tasks or even jobs. I keep a hustle going. I'm always working multiple jobs. There's always something to do. Plus I have a family, raising children, in whatever relationship. So there's always things that are going on. Oak, olive, elm, hornbeam, all of these are really good for people who do a lot. Oak in particular is good for, this one says here, treats brave, determined types of people who struggle on an illness or against adversity despite setbacks. So this could be, so never resting. So again, yes, I've used it just when there's just always something to do and you get kind of drained from that, physically and mentally. Olive, similar, drained of energy, for whom every task is an effort, so you get physically and emotionally drained. These two remedies are great for that. Let me skip down to Scleranthus. This is for people who suffer from indecisiveness. Indecisiveness. If you're always on the fence, if you have a hard time weighing your options and picking a side, Scleranthus is for this. I have a friend I'm going to have to buy this for, right? But this is for the person, and usually these are people who usually don't want to fight or fuss or, you know, what do you call it? Make waves, don't want to stir the pot, you know, they're avoiding conflict by making a decision, so they stay in a place of indecision. They vacillate, they go back and forth. Sometimes they're this way, sometimes they're that way. Their moods fluctuate, they're uncertain. This is the remedy for you, Scleranthus. Star of Bethlehem is another excellent one. This is excellent for receiving any sort of serious news. Someone has passed, there was an accident, some life-changing trauma that occurred. This will help balance out your mood. This is very important because for sure we will face some sort of life-changing incident on a regular basis sometimes. But it could be as simple as, you know, a relationship change, a job change. It could be moving from different phases in life based on our age. As we grow and age, different things change. Sometimes that can be dramatic, especially if some sort of physical condition or illness is associated with it. But so it doesn't have to be the extreme of an accident or a death. Star of Bethlehem is for any sort of situation that causes some kind of trauma or discourse where you feel like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? How will I handle this news? How will I adjust to this change? And then I think it's a couple more I'll mention. Walnut, I like to mention another one that surely we will experience change. There will be some sort of transition in our lives, whether it's puberty, whether it's menopause, whether it's divorce, whether it's moving to a new location or changing our surroundings. This will help smooth out that transition. The only constant thing in life is change, right? So we know that we'll always have changes in our lives. Walnut will help us get through the changes and the rights or the phases or stages of our lives. The last one I like to mention is one of my favorites. This also, again, points to a negative aspect, and I will own it, right? Willow. Willow is for resentment and bitterness. This is for a person who has experienced an unfair or unjust situation. And probably all Black people would probably be able to say that we have experienced this, right? So we could all probably use a little willow, but even in our lives, on our jobs, we may have been treated unfairly. There may have been some sort of discrimination. We may have been treated unfairly in the street by, you know, people who we're passing by that, you know, follows us or watches us or assume that we're doing something wrong. Or it may be in a very intimate relationship where someone betrays you, right? Mistakes your trust and uses your kindness for weakness. Any number of situations where you've maybe felt some resentment or bitterness behind it. Willow is what you need. I often say, and again, it's not a good thing, I work on my forgiveness. I can't say I'm a big supporter of forgiveness. However, if you do hold the resentment and the bitterness and you don't forgive, it will only eat at you. So if you are working on the forgiveness part, at least immediately, right away, handle the resentment and the bitterness part. That will eat you from the inside out, and you will not be able to flourish and function as wonderfully and vibrantly as you could. Whether it's a divorce, whether it's a termination from a job. Someone said to me the other day as I was recounting a situation with a relationship, and they was like, oh, well, you sound, that sounds a little bitter. Oh, yeah, a little bitter. And they were shocked that I owned it. I have no problem owning that, yeah, I had some resentment about a particular situation. So it's okay to have these, we'll say, quote unquote, negative aspects or negative feelings, but we also have to do the work to move past them and to be able to address them so that we can still live in the best way possible, and so that we can still thrive and not simply be surviving and making it through a bad situation. We know these things will occur. We know that they'll happen. So we have to just know how to move through them, even though we feel some kind of way about it, right? That's a phrase we sometimes use. I feel some kind of way that this person treated me like that. The wonderful thing about these flower remedies is they will help you work through feeling some kind of way. No matter what it is, because you can't control what other people do to you. You can only control how you receive it, how you respond to it, and then how you work through it. Flower remedies are an excellent way in which to do that. I stopped sharing my screen because it's about to give me a ocular migraine because my screen was jumping. And I'll try it again and see if it will behave this time. Otherwise, okay. Ooh, that's better. Okay, so let's now talk about some relaxing teas. And I often talk about how I don't love teas. I'm not a tea drinker. However, herbal infusions are a great way to consume teas, especially on a regular basis, especially if you're not good at swallowing pills, or if you already have a routine of a number of pills, capsules and such that you have to take on a regular basis. It is a good option in terms of drinking. It's also a good option to use herbal healing teas as in your drinking regimen. So in addition to water, herbal teas is an excellent add-on as opposed to juices and sodas and these packets that people put in water and things like that that have your artificial sweeteners and colors in it. Instead of those, if you can strictly use herbal teas and water, I think you're going to be much better for it. These particular teas are teas that help to bring calm and relaxation to the body. And you can use them hot or cold. So I highly encourage you to consider making or brewing. It's summertime, most people are going to want maybe an iced tea rather than a warm tea that they embrace in colder months, depending on where you are in the world. So I encourage you to see which teas you'll add into your regular routine. Lemon balm, this is one of, it has a mildly bitter. It's not horrible. There's some teas that are very strong. This one is okay. It has a lemony kind of taste, but this is excellent for creating relaxation in the body, but also, and this is the thing with these teas, I like how they have them all listed. These are all will handle stress and anxiety, but they'll do additional things, right? That's the wonderful thing about herbs. So in addition to being a sedative herb, this also helps with bloating, with nausea, with heartburn, with gas. If you combine it with other herbs, it'll do even other things. But let me just scroll through quickly. Hops is one of my favorites that I want to kind of point out. This we know is very relaxing, sedative effect. It also will help mothers let down their milk, or it will increase their milk flow, right? So in addition to helping with sleeping, it will have that effect with nursing mothers. Chamomile, a little on the mild side for me, but definitely something I have given my children. Not one of the strongest ones. Usually though, if you add it to one of the other teas, you'll get, I think, a better or stronger impact. We know that for children, it's good for teething. It's good for when they are having trouble getting to bed and kind of being calmed down. If you're not suffering from severe insomnia, adults certainly can use it as well. It may be good enough for you to deal with some mild insomnia or just restlessness. You can add it to hops for a nervous stomach. Chamomile can also be added to other like laxative types of herbs like senna to help it have a more soothing effect so that it doesn't cause griping. The next one I'll point out lastly, since it's 11:15, kava kava. This is one of the best ones for anxiety. If you suffer from panic attacks, anxiety attacks, this is going to be the go-to. This is going to help with your mental clarity. It's going to help ease your dealing with people in the public. relieves pain and stiffness, but definitely most noted for its assistance with anxiety or panic attacks. Okay, so I am out of time, and I see Dr. Wright is on. So if you need the packet, feel free to email me, and thanks for joining as always, and I bid you good health and peace.
Yes, thank you very much, Nana Akua. I've already shared your email in the comment section. So if there is anyone who would like to receive the package, they can email you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Yes, up next, we are going to continue the Pan-African history class with Dr. Tyreen Bright. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well,
Hi. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So this past week's reading came from a book. I gave you an article version. You can see me here. I gave you an article version, but it comes from this book on Amilcar Cabral. Okay, those of you interested in actually where some of your readings come from, and no, you don't have to buy it. I sent you the first readings of it. I'll be sending another part of it too, because I think it's important. What you read or should have read this past week was Identity and Dignity in the Context of National Liberation by Amilcar Cabral. And what I'm also going to send is Connecting the Struggles and Informal Talk with Black Americans. Those are two lectures basically that Amilcar Cabral gave. And just to briefly go over some of what is in that lecture. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if I can do it and go to, well, that's the syllabus. Let's see if I could go back. Let me see. No, okay, let's see. Nope. All right, I have to come out of it and then go back into it. So I guess I'm going to share so people can like read along a little bit. Let me just figure out how to do that real quickly. Very quickly. Not real quickly. Let's see. 1 second. Okay, let's see if we get this open. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So those of you who are on can see in real time exactly what I'm doing. Share screen. Okay, so you're seeing my phone, but there we go. Okay, so this is the reading that you had this past week. And this is from, so the book and the book version that I have and what you have are a little, not different in terms of the context, but different in terms of the preface type of information that's there. So it's called Identity and Dignity in the Context of Struggle. Of course, once again, this is Amilcar Cabral. You saw him. He is featured also in the film that we watched last week, Cuba and African Odyssey. He was the young PAIGC leader in Guinea-Bissau who theorized not only about our ethnic diversity and how we can forge unity, how we can consummate our relationships in order to have unity, but he also was the young Pan-Africanist theorist, Pan-African theorist, who said that we essentially should use history and culture as tools of liberation. Part of the way we engage and struggle and fight is to reclaim our history, right? Is to reclaim our culture, right? Wearing African motif, it's not just about, you know, hey, it's fashionable or it's in vogue at this moment or whatever the case may be, right? It's saying I'm reclaiming my culture, right? So we're seeking to have meaning in it. And yes, under colonialism, we are forced to stop speaking our languages, to wear their Western garb, okay, to show up in another group of people's likeness. You can see that even still today, all over Africa, you have scenarios where in the court system, they are still wearing these ridiculous white wigs when they engage in their parliamentary procedures and, you know, their legal proceedings. I think that needs to be scrapped. I mean, like, really, we should probably have a burn the wigs day or something like that, because, you know, not only are the courts in many ways fashioned after Western court systems and parliamentary processes and systems, you know, the people are dressing up like these Western, these European figures. And really, you know, a reclamation of our culture, a liberation of our people would mean taking off those damn wigs and making the legal processes and parliamentary processes more relevant to the culture and the reality of African people, not modeling after another group of people, right? So can you see how I'm, you know, synthesizing that? So he theorized about us reclaiming our history, you know, reclaiming our culture. And these are also acts of, you know, the liberation process. These are part of us engaging struggle, right? And we're doing some of that now. Part of us engaging struggle is dealing with how we actually think, because in order to do something different, you've got to think in a different way, right? You have to change the way you think. So he is a proponent of those things. When you think of Amilcar Cabral, think of, you know, women who are also part of the liberation struggle. He is a champion for that. Also think of, you know, him being able to deal with our issues of ethnic diversity and ethnic differences in light of our common struggle, right? So he is one of the leading proponents in terms of saying that we've got to engage in this collective struggle against colonialism, against white supremacy and culture, against imperialism, essentially, in order to forge relationships, new relationships, and a new nation in many instances. So he is a proponent of all of those things. Okay, so this is what you don't see. This speech actually was given, so the speech, Identity and Dignity in the Context of National Liberation, was given on October 15, 1972. Amilcar Cabral received an honorary doctorate degree at Lincoln University, Pennsylvania. This was his address on that occasion. So this speech is actually his address to Lincoln University here in the United States. It's considered a Black college. It didn't start out that way. It was a college started by white people for Black people, particularly Black males. And then it, you know, became, how would you say, co-ed, where there were both. And he is given an honorary degree by Lincoln University, which is, you know, well known today. I believe Nkrumah also attended Lincoln University, so it's very well known amongst historically Black colleges and universities. So this was the address that he gave, and he touches on a lot of things, right? So he talks about that people's struggle for national liberation and independence from imperialist rule has become a driving force of progress for humanity, and undoubtedly constitutes one of the essential characteristics of contemporary history. The objective analysis of imperialism is, so far as it is a factor or a natural historical phenomenon, indeed necessary in the context of the type of economic political evolution of an important part of humanity, reveals that imperialist rules with wool, with all its train of wretchedness, of pillage, of crime, and the destruction of human and cultural values was not just a negative reality. The vast accumulation of capital is half a dozen countries of Northern Hemisphere, which was the result of piracy, of confiscation of the property of other peoples, and of the ruthless exploitation of the work of these people, will not only lead to the monopolization of colonies, but to the division of the world and more imperialist rule. Okay, so that's how he opens up. And he's essentially saying that, you know, it's not just the monopoly of these African nations, but it signaled in many ways the intention to, you know, dominate the world and its systems in this anti-human process, right? Of dominating people, exploiting people, confiscating their land, so on and so forth. And so he speaks very specifically and broadly to how I think, you know, Guinea-Bissau could be seen as a microcosm for what was happening in the larger world as it related to colonialism and imperialism, okay? I'm not going to go deep into it. What I'm going to do is introduce the next topic under Amilcar Cabral that you're going to get. So you're actually get this weekend, because my intention was to give both of them to you. Can you all see me anymore? Oh no, maybe you just can see my screen and I Love Black People. Can you all see me? Yvonne, can you see me?
No, we can see the readings.
Oh, you can only see the readings. Okay, you don't see me. Okay. All right, so let me take this off. So, you know, if you didn't read this, please go back and read it. What I'm going to do, stop share. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce to you what you'll get next. And not even next, but like this weekend. Okay. Oh, okay, see me in the small. Yes, I'm back. I took the share off. So you're gonna get this reading, right? Okay. So during this is called Connecting the Struggles and Informal Talk with Black Americans. And once again, I like to show people the book, right? Even though you're not required to buy anything here, you're not required to do anything, and just read and study and contribute as much as you can. But this is the book if you are someone who is in the culture or in the process of building up your library. You know, this is essential, right? Return to the Source, Selected Speeches by Amilcar Cabral. And what you all will get next will be this particular reading. It's called Connecting the Struggles, an Informal Talk with Black Americans. And so I'll give you the preface, just a little context. During his last visit to the United States, Cabral asked the African Information Service to organize a small informal meeting at which he could speak with representatives of different Black organizations. The AIS contacted approximately 30 organizations, and on October 20th, 1972, more than 120 people representing a wide range of Black groups in America crowded into a small room to meet with Amilcar Cabral. A number of the people present came to New York specifically for the meeting. At the meeting, the vitality, warmth, and humor of Cabral, the person, became evident to these who had not met him before. To those who had not met him before. Parts of the discussion have been edited grammatically and compensate for the fact that although Cabral spoke many languages, English was not his most comfortable language. So he addresses this group of African people in America And he talks to them about connecting the struggles, which I think is very important in terms of us understanding on a Pan-African level what the commonalities and the differences are between our struggles. Let me point out one commonality. He does not necessarily deal with this direct, but one of the realities that exists and a contemporary analysis of this could be in terms of connecting the struggle is the fact that we in the United States and out here in the diaspora have a very potent form of neocolonialism that I don't think that we recognize on the ground so much. But we are in a neo-colonial phase, just as much of Africa is in a neo-colonial phase. And that brings me to what I want to really just the little point I want to leave with you today is that how do we deal with being in a neo-colonial phase? First, let me define that. What I mean by that is that, like on the African continent, we have leadership, we have public figures, we have people who look like us. However, they don't always serve our interest or our best interest. And my hair is tight. So they don't always serve our best interests, although they look like us, although they may even sometimes be elected by us and appointed by our own people, whether on the continent of Africa or out in the diaspora. The way we deal with that, this neo-colonial phase in our development, is to, in essence, weigh and measure, right? So if you saw the syllabus, there is heavy emphasis on, in our context, in our study, to weigh and measure what we as African people, as Black people, get out of a situation, right? So this is one of the ways in which, or strategy or a tactic in which we can address neo-colonialism. Not to just identify so much with the color, even though, listen, we love Black people. This is I love Black people. But to say, what does this do for Black people? Okay, what is in our hands at the end of the day? What did we get from it? If you're truly here to serve the people and we are part of those people, what do we get? Because so often in political spaces in particular, and in legislative bodies in particular, our people are left empty-handed. And so we have politicians who say they're for Black people, but they don't deliver anything for Black people. Everyone else is served or serviced, and we are given symbolism. And so we have to be very conscious of that, right? What at the end of the day are the benefits? What are the deliverables? What are the tangibles that we have? And we have to do this with leadership that looks like us, most importantly, because when we don't, then it becomes this pronounced example of neocolonialism. You look like us, but you implement the same oppressive, exploitative policies as someone who doesn't look like us. What does that do for us? That does nothing for us, okay? So I think because we're in the diaspora, some of us, some of you on here, we settle so much for just the symbolism, okay? I'm not going to say his name, but a particular mayor of a particular city that I'm from, bragged about, we got an African here, we have an African here, we have an African there. He was at the US Africa Summit in DC. And that was his attitude. We got an African here, we got an African there, we have an African everywhere. At first I was like, okay, this is interesting. But then I thought about it. He's saying they're African. I don't know that they would say that they're African. And then even more, can you work in our best interest? Or is the condition of your presence there that you will not serve or do anything that is beneficial to us? Which is usually the condition. Where other groups of people are able to serve their base and their constituents and the group that they come from, very often the condition for us is that we must negate, do a disservice to, ignore, and even harm Black people in order to stay in those positions, in those elevated positions. And so this is something that we need to have a sharp critique of. Just because you look like us, that's not enough. We need to weigh and measure what you are doing for us and how that is tangible to us, because we have so many material needs and we are always harmed in so many intangible ways, right? So, you know, things can look really good, but then when you weigh and measure it, it doesn't amount to much, right? People in the United States, the conversation around just any of the symbolism, the King Monument in Washington, D.C. What does that mean? What does that do for us? I don't know that it does. I mean, maybe it may inspire some of us, but not if you know real history. It shouldn't inspire you that much, you know, because the U.S. government in 1999, you know, lost a lawsuit where they were found responsible for the death of Martin Luther King and orchestrating his assassination. So now you put a monument for him. I don't know how we should feel about that. You know, very symbolic, maybe symbolic gesture, especially in the Capitol when the government was involved in his assassination. But it's really sort of like a slap in the face, because you give us a statue, policies in place to say, you know, what should and could and couldn't happen in the future with regard to our leadership. No, you know, or like putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. Okay, what is that going to do for Black people? The U.S. government still refuses to pay reparations to a group of people that, you know, without dispute, have been the human capital at the foundation of the country. Symbolism, once again, and our hands are still empty. You know, a face on the money, and money which does not circulate adequately in our community because our communities are used as extraction sites. Let me say that again. Money that does not circulate in our community in the way we would like, because our communities are used as extraction sites, just like every African community around the world. Putting one of our faces on the money is more like an insult than a compliment. Okay. But we've got to be willing to engage the critique. I do think that we are so deprived in so many ways that sometimes we're just happy to get something. Oh, but it's something, right? And no, we can't settle for just something. You know, we can't, that something can't be symbolic. That something has to be tangible. So, Amilcar Cabral, I would say, I'm going to end with this, is someone who talks about, you know, ethnic diversity, but also gives us some segue into this conversation to critique modern or more contemporary expressions of imperialism or colonialism. Okay. And neocolonialism is certainly one of the ways in which we are all connected in the African world, in the Black world, because most places are in vogue enough. They know that it's in vogue enough to get a Black face to put before people, right? And we've got to be astute enough to say that Black face is not enough. And you will serve us, or you won't be there in the instances where we have the power to cast a vote or elect. Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to see if I can see. This always turns the comment sideways, but I'm gonna still do it. Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Curtis Murphy. I am happy and healthy. Okay, good. Chris Emmanuel, how are you? We can use the 7 ways to reveal what people trying to conceal information. Oh, okay, great. That was my file. Question people. Absolutely. Using words right and wrong. All right, to observe how one thinks. Where did you get these 7 ways? This is very interesting. I'm gonna copy that. I can't read the whole thing though. Present the with prospective gain. Thank you very much for contributing to the group. I hope everybody sees that, Curtis Murphy. Get them drunk to observe their true nature. Right. Well, you know, I don't know if we can get close enough to some of these politicians who come in our hue, but not in our best interest. I don't know how we get them to the table to drink. However, yes, I concur. That's right. Kwame Ture said, Blackness is necessary, but not sufficient. Exactly. It's necessary to get it started, but you know, it's not sufficient. You got to show up, and we want to weigh and measure that. And we have to become a little fanatical about it, because we're people who have who have lost so much, who have had so much taken from us, right? That we can't settle for, you know, you're Black. I always say that Black presence doesn't mean Black progress. Matter of fact, in real sophisticated spaces, it symbolizes that they're about to roll the clock back on you. Okay, I mean, you know, listen, I'm sure some people will disagree, but I'm saying this in a very critical way in terms of Obama's policy. To me, Obama in the United States symbolizes they're about to roll the clock back on us in many, many ways. Okay. And for most Black people, if you in the United States in particular, if you weigh and measure, right? Weigh and measure what happened during the Obama administration, a lot of Black people did not do well. Okay. It was a recession for white America, but it was a depression for Black people most of the 8 years. Economic depression, very hard time for Black people. And it coincided with the first identifiably Black president, you know, who in many ways, in terms of policies, and he even just submitted it recently, he said, oh, he could have done more for Black people. Excuse my French. No, like, is that a shock? We knew. People like me knew that he could do more. I was critiquing his policies in real time. So, you know, he knew that he could have done more, and he chose not to do more, you know, and there are some egregious things that took place, in particular, like the murder of, you know, Eric Garner without conviction. Absolutely. He chose other groups to advance their legislative interest, legislative interest that he chose to advance. And he largely ignored Black people legislatively. I always challenge people before now, right? So now people are getting it, right? In terms of the fact that there can be legislation for a particular group, right? Because now we see the Asian hate bill. 2 pieces of legislation, an executive order and a bill to advocate for the protection and well-being of Asian Americans. Well, I was saying long before that, why wasn't there an executive order issued by Obama in protection of our very lives? You kill a Black child, nothing less than life. And in the states that allow it, death penalty, right? That would remedy scenarios like, you know, Trayvon Martin or Tamir Rice, okay? You kill our children, you lose your life too, in terms of freedom, right? You know, he could have done that in terms of an executive order. And my own people, our own people, other Black people always argued with me saying, right, there's still no anti-lynching, right? And, you know, a lot of people would argue with me, say, oh, he can't do executive order. What are you talking about? That's the power of the office of the president of the United States. You can issue an executive order and it will stand while you are there. Oh, it'll be reversed afterwards. So what? It will stand while you are there. We've got to force, the only way to weigh and measure politicians is to weigh and measure them by their policies and their legislative initiatives, period. You don't weigh and measure them by the fact that they wore a beige suit and they were first to do it and you liked it. You don't weigh and measure them by the fact that you like their wife and she's the best looking one that's ever been in the White House. You know, you don't weigh and measure them by, I don't know, even the school they come from, any of that. That's not how you weigh and measure them. You weigh and measure a politician by the legislation he produces for you and in your interest, period. I'm an educator. I teach. I can't go into the classroom and not teach and not transfer knowledge and then want people to judge me, weigh and measure me by the outfit I showed up in or by the way I had my hair that day, right? That would be ridiculous and insane. And that's how we are doing things. So we, African people, Black people, most of all, you know, in these neo-colonial settings have to be the most critical of, yes, people who look like us and say that they're going to serve our interests and not the establishment, which has been responsible for our marginalization, our exploitation, and our oppression. You know, Eric Adams, who I was referring to, you know, we've got to weigh and measure your policies. What do they do for African people, Black people, like Dr. Marimba Ani would say? Is this good for African people? Right? She writes about that in Google. She says, is this good for African people? That's very important. Is this good for us? What does this do for us? We've got to think very selfishly. Okay, because by design, we are meant to have our hands left empty. All right, I'm gonna look at the last comments. The hate Black people. Hold on, let me see. That's right. Ideology is the key. Ideology is theory coupled with practice. Okay. He was the first. Yes. Oh, yes. Well, listen, I see you, Chris. That's what a lot of people say. That's right. There's still no anti-lynching laws, right? But there's an Asian hate bill. There's an 2 years in the pandemic, you got an anti-Asian hate bill. Really? You know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on them, but where's ours? Where's if I ever met a Obama, I've said this for years, my one question would be, what legislation did you produce in protection of our very lives? I don't care about all that other stuff, because see, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, you can't have liberty or you can't pursue happiness if you don't have life. We're still at ground zero everywhere we are in the world, struggling to protect our lives, okay? And trying to force these governments to protect our lives. It's essential. It's at the core of our struggle, right? I mean, this is sort of what Malcolm was talking about. That, you know, you don't surrender your life. We don't We don't care as much about all the other stuff. We get to the other stuff, the tangibles in terms of material aspects of our life. But our lives, if we're going to be very honest, and this is partly really at the core of what this organization is about, our very lives, we're still at ground zero. So we don't have time to play with politicians who are not willing to legislate around the protection of our lives, right? You know, you could get it from us, pretty much. You can get it, meaning like we are going to be on you because of the fact that this is what we're still negotiating about, the very value of our lives. It's unbelievable. You know, so and I'm incensed by it, as you can see. So I'm going over into overtime. So I'm gonna stop here. But you know, we don't have time to play with that. The hate Black people have for their fellow Black people. Yes, right. Yes, we have, right. So we have people in leadership positions who embody white supremacy and culture and hate any Black person just as much as any other group of people would hate Black people. Right? And this is why ideological development is important, because we have all been processed and programmed to be anti-Black, to be anti-African. Yes, I understand. I'm familiar with quite a bit in terms of Nigeria. Yeah, and the ethnic diversity and consequently the struggles for power around that. Right? Right, Chris Emmanuel. Right. If LBJ could go ahead and do legislation that would really was supposed to protect Black people's constitutional rights that were invoked by the 14th Amendment here, equal protection under the law, and the 15th Amendment, the right to vote, then an Obama could do that, you know? And this is why I was very resentful. I had a very visceral response to Obama going around on a speaking campaign in light of the death of George Floyd, you know, talking about racial justice and equality and all of these things, knowing that the first George Floyd, which was Eric Garner, happened on his watch with a Black attorney general, Eric Holder, with another Black attorney general to follow, Loretta Lynch, and with him in the office, and still no federal charges in the case of Eric Garner, who was murdered on camera from start to finish over selling loose cigarettes. Can you believe that? And nothing. That case was not prosecuted at the state level. It went to the federal government, and Obama's administration left it on the desk for the Trump administration, who sent it back to the state. Unbelievable. Okay, 11 minutes from start to finish, you got the chance to see a man murdered over nothing. And the only person in jail or whoever went to jail was the guy who filmed it, right? And that happened on President Obama's watch, you know? I'm gonna leave it there because I don't want to say, anyway. So that case for me is just, is the kind of case that, you know, is infuriating. It will give you an aneurysm thinking about it, right? But those are the kind of struggles we're still having, right? Having to fight for our lives. Oh, thank you, Candace. How are you? Yeah, right. And in many ways, having a Black president disabled us globally, you know, disarmed us. Let me say that, disarmed us, right? Put our guard down, right? For so many people. So many people were caught up in the image imagery and the optics of it all and did not stay on task in terms of critiquing what he was doing. As my own father said, I love the fact that my father said this. He said, no, you're supposed to criticize him. Because somebody was saying, everybody wants to, you're supposed to criticize the president. This is what you need to be doing. Absolutely. Especially a Black president in light of who we are. Okay, what is your views on intensely studying African revolutions in the Americas and the principles organizing and moving under the principles of African culture rather than looking outside of us? Well, that's hopefully what we're doing here, right? Like, what do I think that just saying, Malcolm Brown is talking about how we engage ethnic struggle. And Malcolm Brown is talking about, aspects of neocolonialism and connecting our struggles in the diaspora to the struggles on the continent. I think there are a lot of strategies and tactics that we can employ out in the diaspora that originate from our African nationalist struggles for liberation in Africa. Keep saying the same word over, but so I think a lot of the strategies and tactics on the continent are still relevant and useful for us today. Now, that being said, some of them have to be pliable. We've got to bend them just a little bit and apply them to our specific condition in the diaspora. But on the continent too, there are some updates that have to be applied in order for us to use some of the strategies and tactics that are, our old guard of Pan-Africanists and African nationalists use. But I do think, like what we're saying here, that they are still relevant. African revolutions in the Americas for principles of organizing, right? So I agree with that. And under the principles of African culture, rather than looking outside of us for primary sources to critique and move against neutralized colonialism, neocolonialism, parasitic. So I agree with you. I that's part of the reason why, I don't know if you saw the last lecture when I'm discussing the film and just sort of the points that are hit on in Cuban African Odyssey, where I address, this issue of us always referencing Marxist and Leninist ideology and having those orientations. And that's a critique to have of some of our African leadership. Many of them were heavily Marxist Leninist. But what we always need to remember is that Marx and Lenin neither of them were thinking of any African person. Okay, they were talking about their revolutions, their reality, their material reality. And for them, they tend to subscribe to a completely material analysis and critique and leave out history and culture as tools and weapons of liberation. And Amilcar Cabral makes that adjustment. He's one of the few that said, no, we don't completely adopt their thinking in our strategies and tactics to liberate ourselves. He's saying history is a weapon. History is a tool of liberation. Okay, they wiped the slate clean on us in terms of our history, right? Destroyed us linguistically, imposed their language on us. Okay. To the degree that many of us don't even know our indigenous or native languages, right? Real conversations are the kind of people I always want to talk to, yes. Obama was for sure a representative. Yes, he was definitely a neo-colonial figure. Yeah, he came out and said that he could have done more, but I wanted to be like, no Shiite. We knew that, Thank you for your honesty, at this late date. But yes, he could have done more, in his own words. He could have done more, but let's also remember that there is no backlash in the country. There are some major accomplishments, disproportionate African people. Okay, thank you. Was on his watch also. Yes, of course, right. Freddie Gray was on his watch too. Taking it inside those revolutions are those revolutions. Taking it inside. Interesting. Yes, I agree. I don't want to mess up your name. The person who wrote about the insights from the African liberation struggles. Right, and I agree with you, Candace. Definitely, if we don't critique and admit when we're wrong, then like, how do we make the adjustments, right? You don't fix something that you don't think is a problem. Yeah, he did say. Yes, yes. Bakra Min Ma'at. Absolutely, he did say that on more than one occasion. He did basically say that he was not the president of only Black people. Hold on, let me get my screen back. I don't know. Okay. He did say that he was not only the president of only Black people. And yeah, that we're gonna have to make him do whatever. And he ultimately didn't do much of anything. But I'm gonna, the person who just posted, hold on, the person who just, I'm gonna cut and paste the article or the information you said, some of his accomplishments for us. Yeah, I'm gonna give that a look. I critiqued his war policy during his administration, which, you know, it was certainly unparalleled and not in a good way. But, you know, yeah, I'm always open to looking at, you know, information is information, and we should always at least engage and try to study what it is someone did legislatively in terms of policy and stuff like that. But at the same time, you know, I think there's a very obvious and open critique to be made of him in terms of, you know, his attitude and his lack of policies. And see, this is what I mean too when I say, let me see, copy. This is what I mean as well when I say that's great if you made policies that are that benefited Black people, you know. However, if Black people are losing their lives, I'm not so sure that those little things, you know, that you indirectly did to help us really matter that much. You know, when we're struggling with protection of our lives, protect our lives so we can have all that other stuff. You know, you have nothing. My contention is you have nothing if you don't have life itself. Interesting. That's what, okay. When asked about spending political capital on Black people, Lyndon Johnson, Lyndon, you know what Johnson said? Well, what is the power of the president? Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah. Dennis Blackman is blocked and tried to silence critique from the Black community. Yeah, you know, so Did I mute?
Dr. Red, can you hear us?
Yes, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I don't know what's happening with my okay, there I go. I know what happened with my screen. But yeah, you know, we're having a good conversation. I'm trying to wrap up. One thing we can be sure, nothing lasts forever. The power white folks had. Oh yeah. No, absolutely, right? So it's a beginning, a middle, and an end to everything, you know. So nothing is, and without exception, and that can be applied to life itself, right? There is a beginning, a middle, and an end to everything, including life itself. And so nothing will last forever. Right, yeah, to have a smile. I just keep muting my microphone, I don't know. Tavis Smiley, yeah, he got hurt up pretty bad, but I think he's going to be trying to come back as a result of, you know, Cornel West running under the Green Party. People have been educating me on that recently, and so I'm, you know, yeah, that's it. That's an interesting development here in the United States. Anyway, so that's the last point I want to leave with you, that, you know, read this particular, I'll be sending it to you. Let me see, this particular essay, all right? It's going to go up in momentarily. It's also from this book. And this is the essay on connecting the struggles and informal talk with Black Americans. And, you know, keep our conversation here in mind in terms of, you know, what is happening with us in terms of our neocolonial phase, wherever we are. Is neocolonialism manifesting? And that is without a doubt a common issue for us, right? Black face, white policies, or black face or African face, and anti-African and anti-Black and anti-human policies, okay? So I'll leave it there. I am because we are. Yes. I know he has a talk show now, Tavis Smiley. Thank you. I am because we are. Thank you for committing your time to doing this with us on Saturdays, and loving Black people, African people through action. Okay. I am because we are.
Yes, thank you very much. I am because.
Okay.